Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, well, I haven't done it for a little while, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to actually activate the free videos a day button just for today. I've been really good lately at only doing 2 videos a day, but sometimes days get a little bit crazy, and that's the case here, because both Glaceon and Leafeon VSTAR have gone and been revealed, and this is super exciting. Now, at this stage, some of you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, Wassy, why did you not feature these in the previous video? And the answer's really simple. I did not want these to be a side note in the previous video. These are super exciting and deserve to have a little bit of care taken about them. So, with all of that borne in mind, we've got Leafeon and we've got Glaceon. Let's start with Glaceon. Now, Glaceon looks absolutely awesome. It just looks really cool. Now, at this stage, I do want to remind you just very quickly, what we've actually got here are not just new V-Stars, but also new Vs. And remember that over in Hong Kong and Taiwan, they are supposed to be getting Leafeon and Glaceon V as a pre-order bonus with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So even though they might have different artwork, we don't know one way or the other, these are probably the same cards. Of course, remember over in Japan, Arceus V is a pre-order bonus for Legends Arceus, but it is just an alternate art version of the Arceus, which we now know is coming in Brilliant Stars. I know, right? So, with all of that borne in mind, we've got Glaceon. Now, Glaceon here has got 210 HP, which is fine. And then we've got single energy, 30 damage. Search your deck for a water energy and attach it to this Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. It's fine, but it's 30 damage, which isn't very much. And cool, you get to attach an energy to yourself, but then bear in mind, you then sat in the active ready to take a hit. It's fine, it's not stunning. We've then got free energy 130, and that's just too much. And I know that for water Pokemon, we are not hurting for ways to accelerate energy. We've got Frostmoth, we've got Frostlass, we've got Melanie, but the fact of the matter is, I don't want to put free energy on this to do 130. Yeah, sure, I'll get one hit KO on single prize Pokemon, that's quite nice. But that is about it, ladies and gentlemen. I suppose if you're hitting for weakness, you'll also get Pokemon V, but it's not particularly stunning. Of course, we do need to compare this to the Glaceon that came around in Evolving Skies, because even if you want to play Glaceon VSTAR, you can use either. And like Charizard, this is an example of a Pokemon that will have both a VMAX and a VSTAR legal at the same time, so you could play all of them in a deck and just switch between them as you like. That Glaceon had the same amount of HP. It did 10 less damage, but you got to discard a stadium in play, and the first attack let you evolve straight away, which obviously comboed really nicely with Glaceon VMAX, which had an ability which blocked VMAXs, so essentially you would want to ascend and go straight away. For what it's worth, as VMAXs get less relevant and Glaceon VMAX gets less relevant, I do prefer the new Glaceon V, because Ascension's cool, but you kind of want it because of the VMAX. But as we got onto the V-Star, this is where we get very excited. Now, you got 260 HP, which is really interesting, because of course we've previously seen Arceus and Charizard, each of which had 280, so this kind of represents what seems to be a bit of a lowering, shall we say, of the HP range. Before they'd all, or both, had 280, this shows you can get a little lower. But you're still talking about a 2-prize Pokemon, so let's not go crazy here. This is still a very high HP 2-prize Pokemon. And then what we've got, and it's kind of cobbled together, we've got the jumbo version and the regular version, and between them we can make out what it says. But the first attack, 2 water, 1 colorless, 180 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. Fine. It's alright. I mean, 180 damage is good enough to get a KO on something like a Crobat or a Kricketune, what I'm generally referring to as these lower HP support Pokemon V. And then your 2-hit KOing VMAXs. But you're 2-hit KOing with Disruption. And I've said for many years, if you can't get a 1-hit KO, get a 2-hit KO with Disruption, and that's what we're doing here. It's not perfect, nobody's arguing it's perfect, but it ain't bad, ladies and gentlemen. It ain't bad. Obviously, hitting for weakness, you will get a 1-hit KO on something like a Victini VMAX, which is still a relevant card. Still sees a bunch of play, still fun. I still love Victini VMAX. Never turned into the powerhouse I expected, but it's still an extremely cool card, which I like very much indeed. But this here, it's a decent attack. I don't like that you're not 1-hit KOing Pokemon Vs, but I do like 2-hit KOing VMAXs while trapping them in the active. That is pretty gosh darn cool. And then we've got Crystal Star, this V-Star power, and this V-Star power, 220 damage for a water colorless, and prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. I know. That sounds pretty gosh darned awesome. It basically gives you immunity. Now, what your opponent can do is get around this by switching you. So if they played something like an escape rope to knock you back to the bench, but then grabbed you active again with something like a boss's orders, that would actually work, because you're then a different Pokemon. But unless they go that kind of route, you are going to be safe next turn. And although Icicle Shot doesn't get a 1-hit KO on a Pokemon V, or not everyone at least, Crystal Star does. And this is beautiful. Essentially, you're getting a 1-hit KO on a Pokemon V for 2 prizes, while getting yourself immunity next turn. And these V-Star powers so far have been extremely powerful. They have been very, very, very good. This is the third one we've seen, and they've all been nuts, and this is there as well. Now remember, we are talking once per game, and that means that if you've used something else, Arceus' ability to search for 2 cards, you then will not be able to go and use this. But I think this is worthy of being a once per game attack that also locks you out of all the other once per game attacks and abilities. It really is good. I'm going to go ahead and give Glaceon VSTAR 4 Wossies. It's not, I think, as good as Charizard or Arceus, but the fact that you can 2-hit KO VMAXs while stopping and retreating, and the fact that you can get a 1-hit KO on a Pokemon V while getting immunity, that makes it worth worrying about. I should mention, the box itself, what you basically got here is a bunch of booster packs, it looks like 5, plus you get the V, the V-Star, and the Jumbo V-Star, and this is awesome. Do also bear in mind, we were given a complete list of Pokemon V-Star that are going to be coming in Brilliant Stars, and that was Arceus, Charizard, Whimsicott, and Shaymin. What that means is these Glaceon and Leafeon are not coming in Brilliant Stars. They are only going to be coming in these promo packs. You have been warned. But as for Leafeon, and I do want to get both of them done in one video. I know I could split them over 2, but just not doing it, ladies and gentlemen. Just not doing it. Again, we've got a very equivalent pack here. 5 booster packs, the 2 promos, a jumbo promo. And I should mention, it looks like it comes with an actual V-Star marker, which is cool because we've all got GX markers, but actually we need V-Star markers. And if you're selling us a pack of a V-Star in, we're really going to need a V-Star marker. This seems like a cool decision. Now, Leafeon V, I'm going to be honest, has got a lot to live up to because I love the other Leafeon V. And what we've got, and again, we can kind of read this one just off the front of the box, we've got ourselves 210 HP, which is not great. And for a single grass energy, Leaf Guard, 30 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It's really good if you are in a position where you're going to take a KO, because then you're taking less damage next turn. But it's a single energy attack which is quite nice, but you're only doing 30 damage. It's fine as a starter for 10, you know. Turn 1, going second, get some damage on the board, give yourself a little bit more survivability next turn. Maybe if your opponent's using a weak setup attack that accelerates energy or something like that, you'll actually take no damage. It's fine, it's just not worth getting excited about. And then free energy 180. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Slashing Strike. Yeah. It's not particularly good now, is it? What I will say is, we talked about the numbers. 180 is far from perfect, but 180 will get a Crobat and a Kricketune. And I know I keep saying about getting Crobat and Kricketune, but actually they're widely played Pokemon that are still going to be widely played moving forward, and you're getting one-hit KOs on them. You're not getting most Pokemon V, and that's a little bit sad, but you are getting those, and that's kind of cool. The problem is, the Leafeon V that came around in Evolving Skies is just brilliant. Like, absolutely awesome. I adore it. Now, the attack on Leafeon V is not particularly great. 150 if you can flip a heads, but the ability lets you search your deck for a grass energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. And if you go first when you're not allowed to attack anyway, this is nuts. If you've got a turn where for whatever reason you can't or don't want to attack, this is nuts. If you're desperate for one extra energy to win the game, rather than having to dig through your deck and cross your fingers, you can just use a turn getting it and then have the game sewn up. I love it. Now, to be fair, the fact that this new one can do 180 damage, and that can KO some 2-prize support Pokemon or pretty much any single prizer, that is really good. But for me personally, I love the ability Greening Cells. I think it's ridiculous, and that's the one I'm playing. I'm not ruling out playing one of the new one as an attacker, but I am very much leaning to the existing Leafeon V. But then we've got Leafeon VSTAR. As a side note, again, you do have a VMAX here, and actually, because of Grass not being a really good attack, it has seen some play. Yeah, go nuts. You can play 4 VSTAR, 4 VMAX, and 4 V in your deck, so you absolutely can play around with all of them and make a Mondo Leafeon deck, and that could be a lot of fun. Now, Leafeon VSTAR, again, you got 260 HP, which again is lower than we would like. Sorry about that. And what we've essentially got is free energy, 180 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. It is the same as the attack on the V, but obviously you're doing 150 more damage. And again, like we said with Glaceon, this isn't perfect. Yay, you're getting a one-hit KO on your Crobat and your Kricketune, but you're 2-hit KOing everything else. But then again, you got 260 HP and you're taking 30 less damage next turn. That ain't terrible, ladies and gentlemen. That ain't terrible. I do like the idea of pairing it with Leafeon V Max, though, because Leafeon V Max, you deal 60 damage for each colorless energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost, and if you find yourself in a situation where that's just not doing enough damage, here's just a flat 180, and it's only on a 2-prize Pokemon. I should also mention, because I haven't made this explicit yet, do bear in mind these new Pokemon have a regulation mark of F, whereas the ones from Evolving Skies have a regulation mark of E. So even though at the moment you can play the VMAX and VSTAR together, and incidentally next year you will be able to as well, there will be 1 year, one format where the VSTAR is legal and the VMAX isn't. And where the only V that's going to be legal is the new one, not the old one. You have been warned. We then have the VSTAR Power, which is an ability, and just for my own sake, I love that we've now seen 4 VSTAR, and we've seen 2 attacks and 2 abilities. That makes me very happy indeed. During this turn, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. Yes! This is amazing! This is absolutely amazing. Because you see, I've commentated an awful lot of Pokemon TCG games. And in many of those games, I've been sitting there with whoever my co-caster is at the time, although recently, more often than not, Joe. Hey, Joe. I like casting with Joe. And a lot of the time, we're basically saying, next person to get boss's orders wins. And before that, it was next person to draw Guzma wins. And before that, it was next person to draw Lysander wins. You see where we're going with this. Gusting is huge. And we often end up in a situation where if you get gusting, you win, or the next player to get their gusting card wins. And what Leafeon VSTAR does is it just takes away any of that awkwardness. You're going to get the gusting. And this can be an early game to just cripple your opponent's setup, and then they just can't get rolling and you win. Or it can be mid-game, your opponent's got one big attacker, they're not quite ready yet, bring it up and win. Or this can be late game, guarantee the win. And I love it. The other ability we've seen is, of course, Arceus, which lets you search your deck for any 2 cards. And this is a once per game thing, right? You get 1 V-Star power per game, and it's going to be an attack or an ability. And if it is going to be an ability, it needs to be a game-sealing ability. It needs to be an ability so good, I win the game. That's what this is. Arceus finds me the 2 perfect cards to enable me to win the game. Leafeon gives me gusting, which should either win me the game there and then, or put my opponent in such a bad position or me in such a good position that my win is inevitable. I am not using my once per game V-Star power on an ability unless it's an ability that's going to win me the game. Well, great news, ladies and gentlemen, because a lot of the time, if you do this properly, this is going to be an ability that wins you the game. This is a phenomenal card. I'm not loving the V, I prefer the old V, and the attack is fine, but this is just great. And I know you can get this ability on something like an Umbreon. I am well aware of this. But the fact of the matter with Umbreon is, it's awkward. Because your timing on Umbreon needs to be good. Umbreon, you evolve up into it, and that gives you your gusting. But the problem is, what your opponent can often try and do is get you down to a low hand size, do a bit of disruption, and then you've got to find Umbreon VMAX at the perfect time. What Leafeon VSTAR does is just sit on the bench. And that, I cannot stress enough, this is why it's such a good ability. Because you don't need to find it. You can whack him down on turn 2 and just chill. Umbreon is a great ability and can do this as many times as you've got Umbreon during the game. But you've got to play it from your hand to do so. And that means that you've got to have the Umbreon at the right turn, and Leafeon takes all of that away. As a side note, because I'm sure some of you are wondering, yes, Path to the Peak will turn it off. Path to the Peak says Pokemon with a rule box in play have no abilities, and V-Star very much have a rule box, and this means it won't have an ability. Not perfect, admittedly there are ways to counter it, but I love Leafeon VSTAR. I'm giving it between 4 and 5 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. It's a lot to get through in one video, and hopefully you understand why I had to wait and give them their own video and not just shoehorn them in the previous one. But first of all, these are really fun and look like they could be legit playable cards. And second of all, these are really exciting products about which I am very, very excited indeed. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.